How would you feel if someone took a picture of you when you were in the midst of transformation or an emotional heightened trigger? How would you feel? And I'm really asking this for you to navigate that inside of yourself, because I have a lot of different ideas and feelings about it, which I'm going to share here. And I want to hear what other people feel, because we live in such a crazy time. I recognize that I am a person who does not need to be on my phone all the time. I like to be present with people. So if I'm with you and my phone goes off, it is rare for me to have a need inside of myself to check that. It's actually, it feels like a disturbance to me that it's ringing or vibrating at all, because it's distracting me from my connection with whoever I'm with. Now, of course, there are exceptions to that. And there are moments when I love to be like connected in different ways, and that I want to respond to people virtually. But it is not the space where I love to be in the most, let's say. It's not my favorite space to be in. And yet I live in this world where, people get those same pings and the same, buzzes all the time, and on their watches, on, in their pockets, in their bags, wherever, on their laptops. And all of that stimulation is handled differently with different people. Some people need to respond right away, or check it right away, or navigate and understand what is happening along the way. And I find it personally very disturbing. And I also notice myself going to a space of like feeling triggered when other people respond differently than how I do, which is something that like I feel a lot more settled about in my life right now. But I remember, in the earlier days of pings, it was harder for me to understand that people were so caught up with being on a screen and that stimulation that they couldn't resist checking. I have a lot more compassion for it now than I did. And yet it disturbs me, because somewhere, just as my own pings disturb me, it's something that, is extra on top of the already like multitude of information and just data through our senses that we're already receiving in through our body. And because I'm sensitive, then it's hard for me to understand other people's processes as much as I would like. I know what they are, but to really understand it, and to really understand it from a place of how can I support someone through it, because I've also worked with so many people who are too stimulated, especially younger people in their early 20s, where they've grown up with it. There wasn't a time that they lived without the pings. And there's a need, and that need to put themselves out there on all of these platforms has them disconnecting from themselves and showing a certain part of themselves, which ultimately ends in insecurity and different fears being triggered. And they're far too heightened for it. And so then the curiosity that I have in really understanding how to best support, because it's like an addiction in some way. And yet I also really understand, because I'm curious about it. And so I ask a lot of young people who don't know a different world without that. And it's been there most of my life as well. But still, I had a whole childhood where I wasn't stimulated in that way. And so then how I get that there's a part, that it's part of reality as well. It's not that it's non-reality. We have an augmented reality now. And there's still a part of me that doesn't want people to be on their phones as much and to navigate their inner world, because those are the spaces that I create for others to really connect to themselves. And it's not a denial of, but it's an invitation to connect with yourself first, so that you can always come back to you and not just this persona or the masks or, whatever it is that you're putting out there, understanding what it is, what that dynamic is, and how to come back to yourself. And so to come back to my original question, which was, how would it feel if you were in the midst of transformation in a workshop or in a coaching session or a therapy session or a yoga class, or crying with your friends that somebody took a picture of you in that moment? I feel it so hard. I feel this, I wouldn't like it personally, but there are so many people who don't mind. And yet I've also had pictures taken of me when I felt on a more elated side of transformation, which I was really I really appreciated. And these are spaces that I try to also create within my work, so that I can show what it is that I do. And for me to create safety, I don't want to invite that lens in. And so I work with those two parts of myself a lot. And my question is really putting it out there on, how do you navigate that? How do you feel about that? And if you are taking pictures, how do you get consent? Or does that not bother you? Does the photographer, the person who's taking the images, walk the entire journey with you? Because for me, that's something that would be needed. Somebody would have to be there and walk the path, and then take little time moments out to go and take pictures of the environment that they are also part of, and journeying through themselves. So they're not just a fly on the wall, that they're also journeying in to build that safety and to build that trust, that they understand it, and that others get to know and connect with them as well, which makes their role doubly more challenging. And I come from a space, I studied photography. I love being able to capture people in their moments. That's what I did. I used to capture people on stage, performers, singers, musicians, dancers, comedians. And when it was not on stage, people in their moment, I would search for the moment. I'd be watching people through the lens in order to, I'd wait for the shot to come, instead of just shooting. There are these moments, these magical moments, where we can glimpse into the person's energy. And so I'm coming from a place of loving to be able to capture that in others. And also questioning. That was also a part of my entire study when I was studying this. And when I studied film, is understanding, you're behind the lens and somebody else is on the other side of the lens. And so what are the boundaries there? What's the fluidity there? What is the safety? How do you create it? What do you wait for? All of these things are questions. And so because it is something that I find challenging still to really navigate, I'm used to it, but every group is different. Every person is different. And so it's always a question for me. It's not because you've mastered it with one set of people in one environment that you've mastered that. I've gotten better at that, but I put it out there, especially if you are on the path to creating safety for others and you live in this world and you own your own business. And so you have to post things online. What do you do? So it's food for that. I'd love to actually hear from you on your perspective, your experience of this. Peace out. Until we meet again.